Hi, I'm Vandoren Artist-Clinician Jackie Glazier, and I'm here to talk to you today about getting better on your instrument. Well, that sounds really simple, doesn't it? Isn't that what we're all trying to do? But learning how to practice effectively is the key to really playing well. Who doesn't want to be better on their instrument? But who really likes to practice? I know I don't really like to practice. Most of us enjoy playing, but sometimes practicing can feel like a chore, especially if we feel like we aren't getting better or we're getting better very, very slowly. Well, I have good news for you. By learning to practice more efficiently and more effectively, we can improve much more quickly in a smaller amount of time. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? As a musician, no matter what your age or how long you have been playing, you are a cognitive athlete. Now you may be thinking, what does that mean? A cognitive athlete is someone who exercises their brain the way that athletes use their muscles. We have to learn to train our brain to exercise more control over our key muscles, those in our hands, our fingers, and as wind players, those concerned with our breathing. Think about that the next time that you play your instrument, that it is really your brain that controls the fingers, the rhythm, and the expression. We want to get better in touch with our brain. So let's start by talking about mindful practice versus mindless practice. Have you ever practiced your instrument and your mind is somewhere else? Maybe you're thinking about a test you have coming up or what you're going to eat for dinner. Very likely, if you're playing your instrument and thinking about something else, you're not actually getting anything productive done. You're not actually learning or building anything. It's pretty much just a waste of time. I remember back in school, I had a friend who would brag about practicing 8 hours a day. And I would hear them play and never thought they sounded very good. I was thinking, what are you doing in that 8 hours? So when we talk about practice, it's really about the quality of your practice, not necessarily the quantity. Some people can get more done in 20 minutes than another person can get done in 2 hours. Let's get into some helpful tips on some ways to train our brain. First, it's important to build a mental picture. This means that I want to construct a detailed, accurate picture in my head of what I want the piece or the passage that I'm working on to sound like. This is so crucial. If I don't know what I want to sound like, if I don't know how the piece goes, how will I know what my goal is? It's like walking somewhere when you don't know what or where your destination is. You're never going to get there, right? So how do we build this mental picture? We can listen to recordings of professionals playing this specific piece or just playing our instrument. This helps us develop a good picture of what the end result should be, what a good sound should be, what a good articulation should be. I'm going to give you a specific example. Let's take a look at the following example and work on building an accurate mental picture. Why don't you try some of the following strategies? First, you can audiate the rhythm while feeling a steady tempo. This means you don't have to worry about the pitch, but you are going to keep a nice tempo, maybe clapping or patting your knee and just going da, 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 dee, da, 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 right? I'll start you off. Why don't you try it? If you want to take that up a level, you can also conduct along if you know a 4/4 pattern. We can also sing the pitches. This helps enormously with ingraining the proper sound and correct rhythms and notes. This will also help you identify errors in your playing. Don't worry if you don't like your singing voice. There's a reason we play one instrument, mostly because a lot of us aren't singers. It doesn't need to sound pretty though. It's really just about getting an accurate representation and being able to vocalize that. Besides the rhythm and the notes, try to think about the sound quality, the phrasing, and the articulation that you want. Have a goal for these things as you're building your mental picture so that you can build them into your practice. Now let's take an idea of what this actually sounds like and see if it was close to your mental picture. practicing isn't about playing run-throughs of our piece perfectly. It's about learning and building, which means that struggling and making mistakes is part of productive practice. The important thing is that we are paying attention to our playing and analyzing what we played so that we can identify problems and solving them. Effective practice is all about problem solving. Here's what the process looks like. First, play through a passage or phrase while paying close attention to what you hear. Identify problems or things that could be better. Be specific. Find a possible solution, focus in on the problem area, slow down, and practice repetitions with your solution. Now try the phrase again. For example, maybe I'm playing this passage right here. I identify that there is a problem interval somewhere in the passage that I'm hearing. It's not clean. I slow down and practice this interval connection while thinking about my fingers and my air. Maybe I change the rhythm. Then I start to add notes before or after the problem interval. Once I feel like the problem has gotten better, then I try the whole passage again. This is called targeted practice. I targeted the problem, zoomed in, analyzed it, and solved it. Then I put it back into the phrase. But how do many of us practice? We start at the beginning and play through. Then we play it through again and we try to do it better. By then we are tired and then we move on to something else. But the piece didn't actually get that much better because we didn't fix anything. We didn't give ourselves any specific information other than try it again and do better. Now, what kind of teacher would I be if every time you came to a lesson I said, why don't you just try that again and do it better? Yeah, not that good of a teacher. So I'm going to give you an example of how I might practice this so that you can get an idea of the kind of work you can do when you are practicing. So I'm going to read this excerpt like I'm reading it for the first time. I'm going to go under tempo and really analyze what I'm playing. I think I found a wrong note, so I'm going to try that measure again. I forgot to repeat the B natural, so I'm going to circle that note in my part. Wrong note again. Circle that note. Yep, I missed that A natural. It took me a little while to figure it out, but I'm going to circle that both times in that measure and then try it again. Still kind of struggling with that measure, so I'm going to slow it down. I finally got it correctly, so I'm going to do that a couple times. Now I'm going to move on to the next measure. Oh, I realized I need to slide there, so I'm going to mark that in the part. You notice I'm not reading it perfectly. If I encounter something I have to think about, I kind of slow down and think about it, making sure I'm getting it correctly. Now I'm going to try the passage again and see if I can put all of that together. That time it went much more smoothly. I'm starting to get the patterns under my fingers. You might notice that I did stop to breathe, and that's because I'm under tempo. Eventually I'm going to take this up faster and I won't need to stop to breathe. But I make sure that I kind of breathe on a bar line or a place where I'm not really taking away from the structure, so that I can make sure I'm also using enough air. I'm not trying to make this super long phrase in one breath. So that went pretty well. I'm going to try it again this time, see if maybe I can do it a little bit faster. You might have noticed I added more shaping and phrasing. I added some accents in places, so that was a little bit more interesting. So with each repetition, I'm trying to add something on. I'm not just concentrating on learning the notes and the rhythms, and you notice I'm still practicing under tempo. I'm trying to manage the tempo that I can play it at and still think about a lot of things at the same time, making sure I'm still producing a lovely sound, that I'm listening for the intonation, all of these things that are going to make the end product sound great when it's sped up. Try to develop a strategy for how to fix problems. Is it a problem with the rhythm? Try slowing it down, counting aloud, and clapping so that you can feel the rhythm internally. Is it a fingering issue? Slow it down and look to see what your fingers are doing. Practice singing and fingering at the same time. Is it a problem with an interval connection? Slow it down and think about your finger technique, voicing, and air. Did you notice that for each example I said slow down? This is so important. Many mistakes are made from practicing too fast and practicing incorrectly. We need to give our brain time to absorb what we are trying to get it to do. If we move too quickly, we don't have time to think about everything we need to and can't hear problems as effectively. It is hard to put everything you need to into the piece. Rhythm, technique, sound, musicality, articulation. It is easy to speed things up once you have everything. Don't make this novice mistake by practicing things too fast. When you are playing and recognize an error, don't let it go. Stop immediately and fix it. My students who are the best players and improve the fastest aren't necessarily the ones who are the most talented. They are the ones who recognize their mistakes, and those mistakes bother them. They have to do it over and over and over and over until the mistake is fixed. If you try to develop this quality, I promise it will change your playing. Do you ever find you are practicing and you kind of get stuck? Like, you know the piece isn't as good as you want yet, but you're not really sure how to make it sound better? A helpful tool is to make a list of things to think about when you are practicing. Often we get too focused on one or two things, maybe like our rhythm or our technique, and we forget about many other crucial components that make music sound great. Let's do an exercise. Take a moment and make a list of 10 things to think about when practicing. You can write them down or make a mental note. Let's just see how many you can come up with. Now I'm going to give you 15 things, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are still more things to think about, believe it or not. So let's see if you got some of these. Rhythm, tempo, subdivisions, articulation, sound quality, embouchure, tongue position, voicing, legato connection, musicality, dynamics, technique, hand position, body tension, and air. Again, there are probably more things, but that's a lot of things to think about, and my guess is probably you're only thinking about 2 or 3 when you're playing most of the time. The last but very important thing that I want to mention is self-talk. Self-talk is how we talk to ourselves in our head when we are performing or practicing. It is a crucial component of getting better. We often say horrible things to ourselves that we would never say to another human being. Think about some of these things that we tell ourselves. You are terrible at the clarinet. You are never going to be able to play this piece. Your technique is awful. Jennifer is so much better than you. You always squeak. You can't do anything right. Some of those sound familiar? Now imagine saying those things to the person sitting next to you in class. Seems pretty mean, right? These words might make someone cry or give up. Yet your brain doesn't understand the difference between someone saying these things to you and you saying them to yourself. It still impacts you. Try to pay attention to the way you talk to yourself, especially when you're practicing or performing. Try encouraging yourself to get better rather than beating yourself up. Make sure to write positive commands in your music, not things to avoid. Let me give you an example. Instead of don't rush, write keep a steady tempo. Instead of don't bite, think keep corners of the embouchure in. When your brain reads don't rush, it just sees rush, rush, rush. That's all it's thinking about. So instead, try to put in a positive command that's something you can think about to keep you from doing the thing you want to avoid. When I really took this on into my playing and changed the way that I talk to myself and the things I wrote in my music, it made a massive difference. Using positive self-talk doesn't mean we let errors go and we don't address them. It doesn't mean we're egotistical or we're telling ourselves things that aren't true. It just means that we don't take our mistakes personally and instead we develop a strategy to fix them. Try to talk to yourself the way a good teacher would. Be specific and honest, but give yourself specific ways to make things better rather than beating yourself up. Thanks for watching this video today. I hope you found these things helpful and will start incorporating them into your practice sessions. When we start thinking this way about practicing, it really changes the game for getting better on our instrument.